All right, it's turn 26. We'll go through events and then I'm going to talk through the strategy that my team has discussed this turn and what we've come up with. A couple of team art casts as always. So we had Coppercliff, which is a 2-gem site, and a Bubbling Fissure, which is a 1 air. Coppercliff is 1 fire, 1 earth. So 3 gems for 3 team art casts, 8 turn payoff. I'll take it. But then SSG73 found a bunch of sites. Specifically, he found 2 sites, each of which is 2 death. So I've jumped from 1 death income to 5 death income, and that's great considering what my research goals are at the moment. Theranos is making a reasonable death income. Atlanta's got basically nothing, but as a team, we have a great hunger for death gems that you wouldn't initially think on seeing our national path access. We want every death gem we can find, so that's a really big find. Pangea pinged Yomi, but didn't really push the action, and then the plague is spreading. So the plague is now in Lake Purple, all the way over here on the far right. Children are disappearing in Pelagia, so 21 unrest in our capital. Remember, we are a Luck 2 nation. Luck 2 Order 3, in fact, which actually applies in our capital, but that doesn't protect you entirely, and most of our lake is Shitty Misfortune and Turmoil Scales. So, yeah, cool. And then finally, over here, we caught a witch. Great. Mostly irrelevant, but the plague is alive and well in Lake Purple. Let's see where it goes next game on this edition of COVID Pelagia edition. So what have we done as a nation? What we've got here is the Atlantean army moving up into the center. I'm moving a lot of my troops over here as well because we've identified that this quite vulnerable connection is basically our strategic artery. This is the connection that is going to keep us alive and allow us to support each other going forward. So stationing troops here is important. It also means that we're proximate if at any point we need to move into either Lunker or TNN. That's part of what we discussed. The big thing we've gone through, however, was what's our strategy here? Because the team had a bit of a discussion, and it was basically along the lines of all the dangers of this game ending really, really soon and us not getting to accomplish anything. Here's the big fear. The big fear is that Team Machaka, so Machaka, Beritos, Igartha, will steamroll the elves, or Team Roos Niflheim Pangea will steamroll the elves and what they're still capturing of Yomi, Lunker, etc. They'll immediately go to war with one another, and one of them will quite quickly get an advantage based on whoever wins the initial engagements, grab the deciding throne, and end the game. That is unacceptable. We have memes, and we need time in order to pull them off. So our strategy here is we are going to aggressively drag this game. We are going to pull it as late as we can, keeping that balance of power as much as we can, in order to allow us time to develop our own plots and plans, which are mostly based around global shenanigans. I think our first global should be Riches from Beneath, which Atlantis will be casting in a couple of turns. Hopefully we're going to be able to follow it up with Earthblood Deepwell. At least that's the plan. Riches from Beneath won't do much for me, but it'll help boost the income in the other lake. Not by much, but by a little bit. And it will also give Atlantis resources, which means they can move over to making a larger proportion of Coral Guard, who Stalin quite likes. I quite like them too. They're a reasonably good troop choice. They have decent protection. They hit very, very hard. They have the poison barbs. They take nat prof buffs really, really well because the weakness of the reef dwellers is not that. I want this. The basic natural protection of 7, not quite as good as the deep one. Basic natural protection of 9. So that's a slight weakness, but they wear actual armor. It means that they take alt buffs better, however. They get more marginal benefit. So how are we going to drag this war? Well, we are great friends with TNN, and right now the biggest threat to Team Elf, and thus the end of this war, is the collapse of TNN. As long as the elves keep fighting, as long as the elves are putting up resistance to the Ice team and to Team Agartha, Beritos, Machaka, as long as resistance is coming from the elves, the game will continue. And the elves are much, much stronger in terms of power per gold, in terms of combat power they can put out, than us. We are pretty weak. There's not really much we can do if we directly intervene. However, the elves are quite strong. So you can see where this is going. The immediate threat to TNN is going to be a bigger Garthan or Machakan stack coming in and sieging their capital from former Arcocephali. So we have a couple of turns until that's likely to happen, and in those turns we need to start equipping TNN. Therados is at construction 4, going on construction 6. So we're thinking regeneration rings, we're thinking thug kit, things for She-Lord, maybe Ree if he has them. Let's thug out TNN, and then for my part, I'm thinking gold contributions. I'm not super rich at all, but if if TNN is going to tolerate me in their territories, what I can do is fork over relatively large sums of gold, which can be used directly to produce sacreds and thugs, which will then allow them to resist the pressures from Machaka, and Agartha far more effectively than any direct involvement on my part go. It also means that it's much easier to step back from the brink, right? So if the elves completely dumpster Machaka, it's easy for us to then say, oh, well, you don't need any more support. Whereas if one was to declare war on someone, getting out of a war requires intense negotiations, and often if you're the one who's after the peace and the other person still holds a grudge, you're going to end up giving up a lot more than you otherwise would. So the solution, because it's never gone wrong for anyone in the past anywhere in human history, is proxy war. We are going to supply gold and equipment at favorable rates to the elves, and we're going to use that in order to prop them up against aggression from their much more powerful at this point opponents. Their opponents are much larger and stronger than them. Hopefully that will extend the duration of this war, keeping people off us and the elves, and also off each other, preventing a throne win and giving us time to start developing like our economies and our plans, because we are so behind. But since we're not in a war, hopefully our resource expenditure won't be high, so we're able to use our relatively meager resources more efficiently to build up for a middle and late game. That's the rough plan. I'm going to cycle through a few turns rapidly now, I imagine, unless something catches me off guard and surprises me. Worth noting, Arcocephali still being relevant with small parties of Wind Riders. These are the last Wind Riders of Arcocephali, because without their capital, they can't recruit more. But hey, they're doing stuff. Unfortunately, the Ice team will be coming for Varnheim soon, and I imagine Pangaea will be storming Yomi probably this coming turn. So, yeah, there'll be pressure coming from the south. But for the moment, we have a brief window, and we're going to use it. See you in turn 27. Okay, T27. Not a huge amount happened this turn. The plague is still sitting in Lake Purple, which is up to 29 unrest and losing more population by the turn. That is okay. We have found one magic site, a Rustwater, but Rustwater is 5 gem income. 2 water, 2 earth, 1 fire, here in this wasteland of Jabal Kish, found by this nice little random event Siren. That is a fantastic site, and as you can see from gem income, I am racing ahead of my comrades despite not having that many more provinces. My site searching has just been a combination of lucky, and I'm also doing a lot of it. Plus, there's limited path access with Atlantis, and Atlantis and Therados are going to have to split site searching duty in order to make sure the lake is covered as comprehensively as possible. Most of it's still waiting for Voice of Tiamat, so hopefully they'll get a boost once I get in range and can cast that on them a little bit more. Therados will take a little bit of time to get out additional Hecatorides, which will do their nature searching. They've just been so pressed for money early on that getting out a number of Hecatorides early is difficult. They've been focused on just getting enough researchers and forgers out that they're able to equip themselves for when they get more advanced magic. Well, they have to get the magic, and then they have to be able to forge, pretty much. So that was handy. Other than that, hit enchantment 5. It's going on to enchantment 6. So enchantment 5 is our first we can possibly fight a conflict in some way level, because we now have foul vapors, and we have poison resistance 15 in our bless. And that's obviously a non-incarnate bless, so we've got it even though our god won't be awake for another while yet. We are still probably about 9 to 10 turns away from the point where our monolith will wake up and give us a god to play with, but we still have PR 15 in the bless. So right now, what I could do, if I absolutely had to, was recruit a Pearl King, who is sacred. This is probably the best option, and cast Foul Vapors behind some sort of army that was poison resistant. I'd have to summon up some chaff to make it happen, but I can now do a Foul Vapors trap. Is that a good counter? Probably not. There's a lot of regen out there, which partially counters foul vapors. There's a lot of really dangerous armies that can cut through the sort of chaff that I'd be able to summon up. It would have to be something like a shit ton of elementals, and then retreating the elemental summoners, and then letting the FV trigger from behind the elemental wall. But when we're dealing with big armies and dracons and things like that, it's not looking good. Speaking of not looking good, battle is upon us. So this is an army of Agartha. It consists mostly of Seal Guards, and then there are Great Olms, Crave Gubs. So there is going to be crap tons of siege strength in this army, and Magma Kids, a couple of Magma Kids. I would have expected more Magma Kids and relatively fewer Seal Guards, but there we go. I'm also not sure how many mages are in there, which is odd. I would have expected heavier mage support. Anyway, it's going for TNN. Now, TNN shows as having 40 units, mostly militia and Firbolg druids. So the researchers and some militia he's hired, maybe for siege defense, not going to help you against Agartha. One of Agartha's strengths is that while they're slow, they siege. They siege. 8.6 siege strength in a Seal Guardsman, because they have a siege bonus of 5 and very high strength. Plus the fact that Agartha units don't eat, meaning that they can siege effectively even in territories that are completely depopulated, means you have a recipe for a very good siege nation. These will move on to TNN next turn and break it. What we don't know is how many TNN Sacreds are in this position, and how many TNN Thugs are in this position. Either way, TNN has asked for some items which are being shipped over, which include, I think, a Ring of Regen and a few other pieces of kit. At the same time, Theranos is going to begin selling research items to Agartha for Death Gems relatively soon. I'm not sure what turn that starts on. I just have in my notes for this bracket of turns for this episode that our capitalism of selling our quills commences relatively shortly or around this time. Anyway, hopefully with our equipment, TNN will be able to throw this off, because as much as I like Amir, I like Agartha, good guys, nothing wrong with this team. If they take TNN at this point, this game is in severe danger, because they'll then be able to sweep the rest of TNN, go south, and then it's just time for a powwow to punch it out with Team GC for the win, which we don't want. We don't want the game over that soon. We're still too weak and irrelevant, and we haven't done our cool shit yet. So we're going to wait and see what happens next turn in turn 28. I expect they'll move on and crack the fort, and we'll go from there. But yeah, Rustwater was a nice find. Enchantment 5, we finally have some combat magic. Other than that, not making any moves. We're going to let Lunker continue to resist as long as it can. We're not going to take that fight. We're going to let the elves continue to resist, and we're going to support them in doing so through trade and other mechanisms, and we'll see how it all pans out on turn 28. Okay, turn 28, and this is what we all unfortunately get to see. Not too unfortunate. Six has done a really good job fighting Yomi, and he's clearly ready to go in. So this is the final battle in Yomi. You have one extremely wounded heroic Onishuko, the biggest, blackest rock, which is a high path monolith with a bag of wine for some reason, a couple of whites that they have clearly just summoned up using the last of their Death Gem income, and Pangea. And Pangea consists of a whole bunch of these counter thugs, very few white centaurs, just a small number of white centaurs, and then a couple of pans with nature gems. And of course the Maenads, whose job is to go in and die. So the Maenads go in, choke up the whites, which gives them things to slash while the white centaurs kill them. And then, having killed the last defenders, I guess except for the Onishugo, we're back where we started. Only this time, we have the thugs in direct contact with the monolith. 34... Oh, so this one's got a flesh eater. Jeez, okay. Although the Smasher is what they're going to be after. You're going to be after the armor negating damage from the Smasher. So this is a weapon that is viable for fighting monoliths. It is this bonus damage, this shatter effect, only triggers on inanimate, which is a relatively small number of threats. The great swords are more generalist weapons. They're armor piercing, high damage. So those are 32 damage swings. Now they won't have blood. They won't have the blood bonus in most cases, because they won't have killed anything recently. But this is enough to eventually, unfortunately, cut down the brave defenders of Yomi And the Oni Shugo sits there dueling to the last. I think he's in his ghost form at this point. No, he's just body ethereal. Eventually he will run. He will run slowly because he has lost an arm, he's battle fright, and he is crippled. So he's going to slowly cripple walk off the field, leaving Pangaea victorious. And that's all she wrote. So the biggest, blackest rock, the god of Yomi, has been permanently vanquished. Now, this has happened before Lunker could get their plan together, because their plan was to go take Sparkles and go do a Sparkles airdrop onto the Pangaean forces. Clearly now they're too late to do that, and they're limited to just raiding and defending as best they can with good old Sparkles, who is based in Lunker at the moment. Other than that, all these events are plague. Plague, 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 plague. So, Genom and Lake Purple and all this is just all, this is the COOF zone. This is the COVID zone right here. People are dying, taxes are cut, it just happens. I think it's spread on land. Yes, it has at Gnome Peak. So, 1, 2, 3 are all plague provinces. Great. It's actually significantly and noticeably hurting my total income and population every turn, but it's thematic and it fits with the nature of the game that we're playing, so gonna go with it. What else? Atlantis kicked out the last of the Amber Clan, lost a couple of units doing it, including 3 of the valuable Coral Guards, but that's okay. It does give us this position here. Now, no one's going to come fight us for this little bundle of water, but it does give us the ability to power project in this area. We're probably going to want to temple this eventually to help provide at least some Dominion support, because we will eventually want to get Dominion on this connecting area, and we'll need every input province we can to be covered with a temple in order to make that so. But for the moment, we're just too broke to do that in any way, shape, or form. And then we've got these Black Forest Palisade constructed. We'll upgrade that as soon as we can. We're already upgrading Caverns of Gold. That'll give us 2 more research mage recruitment points and let us control this passageway. We now have both of the ways south, which is good. We can essentially cut the map in 2 at this point, which is handy and should discourage Pangaea from saying, oh, we should come south and invade. I don't think they have any intention of doing that, but if both these provinces are forted and are filled with mages, it just makes it look that little bit less pleasant. What else? We didn't find any magic sites, but of course we did put up a global enchantment. This is Riches from Beneath. Riches from Beneath is usually cast by a relatively small number of nations, because its primary bonus is to give you bonus resources. Let's see if we can click on it. There you are. 20% resources up to plus 100%, so up to 5 candles, based on the number of candles in your province. Then you get 4% times your resource value by your Dominion to max Dominion 5. So a relatively small Dominion bonus. Unfortunate. But it's something. It's something. What I believe that resource value means is if the resources are being sucked out of that province by a fort, you're not going to get much of the bonus. Like, you're going to get a decimal, whereas if a fort is boosting the resource value of your province through admin value, you may in fact get more than the otherwise maximum 20% income from your province. Plus, you get up to 100% extra income from mines, which is usually a small add-on. This is primarily a resource boost. This is primarily intended to allow people like Theranos to put out a lot of their hoplites, to allow Atlantis to go over to their Coral Guards. That's all fine, well and good. However, for Pelagia, it doesn't really mean much, if you follow. It doesn't mean much because, 1, we don't need that many resources to recruit our units. If you look at our units, we have a mixture of recruitment points and resources. And at the moment we have, at least in these provinces where it's applying, we have far more resources than recruitment points. So not a particularly strong limiter there. Normally we might be resource limited, probably not. And turtles are rec point limited more than they are resource limited, although again, they're a relatively balanced unit type. We also just don't have much Dominion, and not having much Dominion means I'm not getting much of an income benefit at all. If you look at my allies, Atlantis got the biggest benefit from casting this. Theranos didn't feel it that much, but that's because they lost at the same time. and then I gained a little bit as well. So this is a real imperative for me to get my Dominion fixed. I need to get my Dominion fixed, otherwise I'm not going to get any benefit from my scales, or now from this like reasonable global enchantment that we just paid good earthbounds to do. So I've actually switched over from recruiting mages underwater to recruiting lots and lots of merman priests, and I'm going to fan them out, and I'm going to start A, preaching, and B, building temples, and then preaching in those temples to try and get that Dominion up. Uh, it's a hard time to be Pelagia so far as keeping the faith goes. But SSG-73 is out and has kicked this province over to one candle. What he'll do is he'll come up to Caverns of Gold, search there, and that'll hopefully help kick Caverns of Gold to positive Dominion as well, just burning out some of the candles along the way to get a little bit of Dominion spread, and the priests will follow behind to try and secure that situation. I have no hope of spreading Dominion down here, because we're going to have competition from the Agarth and Doom stacks that have the capacity to take this throne and spread temple checks from there, and who have probably built temples in some of these provinces here as well. And then there's TNN's capital, and there's Thunderstriking Wizard Thrasher, who's also generating temple checks. There's a lot of temple checks coming out from opponents in the south and the north. It's going to keep squeezing us, but what can we do? And an extra temple check over here as Snek the Drakon walks to the south. So strategically, what are we expecting this turn? Well, we can see Ur's army moving in through Saramatia to reinforce. But the big highlight of this turn is that Agartha, this army of Seal Guards, Magma Children, Atavi Archers, Longbowmen, and Great Olms, led by an Oracle of Subterranean Fires, clearly looks like it is about to move on TNN. Now, obviously what's happened here is Agartha has waited for reinforcements. So this army is much, much larger than it was before. It's gone from 90 units to 280, but it seems like a majority of it, or at least a plurality of it, is still Seal Guards. Seal Guard, those size 4, quite expensive Agarthan Sacreds, who normally wouldn't be the greatest troop in the world, but with their bless, will be really quite resistant and difficult to kill. They're moderately protected, they'll have hit points, they'll have regeneration, they'll be resistant to a bunch of elements, and they hit exceptionally hard with that Obsidian Glaive, which is a benefit for them. I'm not sure if that's a perfectly well-adapted tool against what they're probably going to be fighting, which is Tua and She, but if they do hit something, they're going to kill the shit out of it. The Magma Kids will probably be a little bit more useful because they have the area of effect Flame Strike. That might be good for popping some glamour. That said, at the same time, the elves have the ability to resist that sort of fiery damage. Just one of the things they're prepped for. So we'll see how this goes. A lot of this comes down to, as I've said before, how many thugs are on TNN's capital to augment the militias and Firbolg druids and warriors, and also what role will the god play. The god's not particularly useful against this Agarthan army because if the Seal Guards surround it, they will be able to kill it. It will be harassed, so it will have no defense, and they hit really, really hard with those glaives, so it will not be able to regenerate through that sort of damage. So there we go. It's almost certain that next turn the Agarthan army will move on to TNN. We're arranging item shipments from the Therodian Forges now, but that said, we're also going to negotiate sales from the Therodian Forges to anyone who can pay for the items, but we're sort of focused on making sure TNN gets what they ordered as a matter of course, because all of their items are going to go into their defense. We're going to come back in turn 29. I'm aware this is a quicker turn, just so we can see if Agartha makes the move we expect, and then talk about how we're going to follow from there. The reality is, even if this Agarthan army is destroyed, there's follow-up forces behind. But if Agartha is able to take TNN now, it'll be seriously problematic for the prospect of TNN providing ongoing resistance. So, fingers crossed. We'll come back in turn 29. All right, turn 29. Plague's still going in Genom and Gnome Peaks, but we also have Sharks. As if there wasn't enough problem, the guys over here in the Western Lake have decided, you know what, these guys over there are suffering, we need our own thing, so I now have 50 unrest because sharks are eating people randomly. This is one drawback of living underwater. Local wildlife can include sharks. Problematic. What else happened? The Agarthan army has marched onto TNN, they have breached the fortification, we can see the Macharkan Lion Warriors are here, holding the throne and probably the path of retreat as well. I don't think they'll move on. I think they'll hold this path here. But what's probably going to happen next turn is that Agartha is going to assault. I've spoken to TNN. They have everything they need. They're committed. They're going to try and break the siege, and we're going to see what's going to happen. Meanwhile, that team is also, the elves are also particularly active on what they regard as the weakest and most vulnerable front, which is unfortunate for us because we would rather be putting pressure on people other than Saramatia and Hinnom. But that's what they're doing. So the Goblin Laser Pound Goblin Smasher, the Raven of the Underworld, is over here, counter-raiding, and the Wind Riders of Arcocephali, the last surviving ones, are actually besieging Saramatia's capital this turn, having seized these provinces around here. I don't think they're income tracing, but they're certainly damaging the Saramatian economy and their ability to ramp up. That's a good thing in some senses, because Saramatia ramps quite well as a nation, which they can't do if their capital is under siege and their lands are taken. But Hinnom looks like it's doing fine. And Hinnom's survival... Hinnom's survival is problematic if you were wishing bad things about this team, because they're able to essentially anchor it. Is serving as flank guard, Saramatia is suffering, but Hinnom isn't taking damage, which means Hinnom is probably researching, producing units, producing mill carts, moving towards getting gear, or at least one of their teammates will get them gear, and sooner or later they're going to set up a blood economy, and it's going to be problem central. That said, we might need them to be strong if we're going to rely on them for support against anyone else. Looks like they're still recruiting Dawn Guard in the capital, so there you go, they're doing that. But there's this big army of 100 giants, mostly Dawn Guards, supported by Avite spearmen and heavy archers, and a couple of chariots led by Methusartus, the Melkart. And they're going to go fight on Lunker, I think. What happened this turn? Oh, Therados just lost a scout. Unfortunate. So Lunker is in a position where they're going to have to resist against this large Hinnomite force. For our part, we do not have an ability to contest the capital. However, we will seek permission from Lunker to move back into their lands this turn on an understanding that they're going to be fighting a war with Hinnom, and either they're going to win, in which case we'll back off, or they lose, in which case if we have their land, Hinnom doesn't. So we'll see if they bite on that one. Look at that random event over there, man. 70 foul spawns, foul beasts, carrion beasts, and Eddens. Great province. Fantastic. So, effective Elven counterattack in the west. A big battle coming on TNN. Looks like a big battle coming on Lunker as well. And then over here, reinforcements streaming down, just in case things don't all go their way. Right now, it looks like Team Chris are strong and in charge. I haven't seen the armies from Rus and Pangaea. Now, look, if you're judging us over the poor scout coverage, by the way, we're in a situation whereby the Atlanteans are focusing on getting their mages out and haven't found a single on-land independent scout province, which makes a degree of sense. Only Therados has found on-land scouts that are recruitable outside of forts, so almost our entire scout network is based on Therodian work at the moment. Meanwhile, I can't recruit scouts anywhere other than in these two provinces here, one of which is my cap, which will always be producing Ichthyian mages unless it's producing my Holy Threes. The Sacred Lake is currently producing mages because I desperately need research, but if I wanted scouts, this is where they have to come from. I can't recruit scouts on land. Limiting factor number 7,000 for Pelagia. So there we go. Normally, I'm just thinking in terms of how I cut this together. Normally I would stop at turn 29, I reckon, but I desperately want to see this battle, and it should be relatively soon. So, well, instantly for you guys. I am going to take it to turn 30 in a moment. We can see how that battle turns out. Anything else that I need to flag before then? We got some gems from Arcocephali to pay for the items that we're transferring to TNN. We got a water lens, which is an item from Therados, which extends water ritual range by 1, and that's going to allow us to start casting Voice of Tiamat further into their lake. And we hit Enchantment 6, moving on Enchantment 7. Enchantment 7 will give us Serpent's Blessing, which gives us a mechanism by which we can protect an army, not just a couple of mages, but an army, from our own Foul Vapors. So at that point, we are a fully functional Foul Vapors nation. We're not a good one, but we're something. Research speed up to 600 RP a turn, but the economy is chugging along at 1400 income, 540 upkeep. There's my gem income for context. Relatively good. Wish death was higher, but we're only really finding it from SSG 73 anyway. But we'll keep gem searching because we're not at war and it's a real focus for us. Our gem economy is going to be critically important. Final comment, I think I'm going to be able to snipe this province here that's been taken over by barbarians. TNN won't have anything nearby that can take it back, and there's no reason to leave it independent. So we'll slip in, take it, and if they want it later, if they're doing well, then we'll just have to do the right thing and hand it back. But until then, we should be able to extract some nice income from Bahamut because it looks like it's a farmland, so may as well clear it. That's it for T29. I'll come back in turn 30. Cheers. Okay, it's turn 30, and the news of the turn is the fight happened and the Agarthan army is gone. I'm really disappointed that I can't show you the scout report here. However, fortunately, I do have the Butcher's Bill because I have just been on Discord with Basilius Basil, who is playing TNN, and he gave me the Butcher's Bill. Now, could he be lying? Yes, but this is what he is representing. Of the Agarthan army that went in, all of the Olms are dead. 4 Earth Readers are dead, 49 Seal Guard, and all of the Magma Children are dead. In exchange, TNN lost 10 Tour Warriors, 30 Militia, and a Fearbolg Druid. The thugs, the She-Lord thugs that we helped kit, got about 77 kills, I'm told, between them, and were critical in helping to clean up that Agarthan army. Now, that's not a total victory, but it is a victory nonetheless. The Agarthan army has scattered back to this province, and I believe over here as well. Some of the mages survived, but the Sacred Core has been decimated. The Olms are a big loss, as are the Magma Children, and also a bunch of random shit that was with it, like cave grubs and things like that. All of those cost gems, all of them are useful, and all of them are gone. And in exchange, the losses that TNN took are really, really sustainable. The militia are, well, they're militia. The druid was a lab rat. The 10 Tour Warriors are eminently replaceable with the funding we're providing, or rather the trade we are funneling, which is causing them to have the money to be able to resist. The next project will be them looking to purchase nature gems in order to power their swarms. The position they're now in is they could potentially counterattack, but to do that, they have to get through the Machakan Lion Warriors first. Lion Warriors are good, they're a quality unit. They're supported by the surviving Agarthans, but you have to think that with all those thugs intact and available, that TNN is in a position to do at least a limited counterattack at this point, which is exactly what we needed. Exactly what we needed. We needed something that would slow this conflict down, and a defeat of the Agarthan army is, with the greatest respect to our Agarthan player, exactly what we needed to ensure this game wasn't over in the next 15 turns. So, proxy war victory secured, at least for the moment. It could all go to shit next turn, we'll see. Couple of other things happened. We cast Tiamat in the other lake because now we have extended cast range. Using this guy here, we can reach significant parts of the lake. Didn't find anything though, so it was a bit of a wash. And also, always disappointing when your semi-rainbow god doesn't find anything, especially in a high magic density location like a cave. Disappointing. We saw a couple of battles. Pangea, we have evidence now Pangea is deploying against Varnheim, so they've moved their army north. We cleared out the barbarians. Good job, Turtle Warriors. Javelin's doing good work. Atlantis moved in on Lunker. Theridos moved in on Lunker. And we pinged the throne. This is all, pretty sure this is all Plague again. Still going. So, on this front, what's happened is Sparkles came out to play. The bull came out to play. The bull was defeated and retreated into the fortress at Lunker. So the bull is now in the fortress, I believe. The fortress is besieged by 2 Melkarts, 2 geared Melkarts, and that was how they protected themselves from Sparkles, while the Siege Chaff units split off and are coming up behind. So I imagine these Avim and the combination of boars and trolls and siege crap will come in now and help break a Lunker. I'm not sure what Lunker's defensive strategy is. Either way, we grab the throne back, we grab 19 back, we'll take 2. And as much as we would have liked Lunker, at the end of the day, it's likely to be Hinnom's property. And if there was a team other than us that's going to take them, well, Hinnom would be our preference, I think. So that's that. This team is not long for the world. The remaining Lunken provinces are the only thing anchoring their Dominion candles. Once Lunker is eliminated, they'll go. But, we're feeling a little bit mixed about this because Sparkles resisted so fervently. And who knows, maybe Sparkles has got a chance to make a last stand in the fort or something like that before it all goes wrong. So respect to Sparkles, it'll be sad to see him go. Over here we can see evidence that I want to note this. Good site searching by Beratos and Machaka and whatever. We've got brides in waiting walking around. We've got the brazen bulls walking around. We've got enchanters, so they have enchanters from somewhere walking around. I wouldn't be surprised if this team has the highest gem income in the game at this point, because I've just seen evidence of searching mages walking through the various allied lands, making sure they're all covered. We'd be doing more of that if our connection was simpler and easier, and if our paths were more diverse. For the moment, we're going to have to make do with Voice of Tiamat and the other searching that we can do locally. But that team, evidence that they're searching quite well. All good. Any other notes that we can say? Well, Saramashi has freed their capital, which is something, I suppose. Evidence that GC is pulling together a siege force here. There's no other reason to concentrate. Indie Pale Ones, Great Bears, things like that. This is siege chaff. Army supported by a couple of berserkers and skin shifters, as well as a Ajme. So there you go. They're safe in Femoria, though. They won't want to come out and play in case the Vanhears eat them. But with Pangaea moving up north, hopefully, as far as they're concerned, what will hopefully happen is Pangaea can clean up this southern front, smooth the lines, and then they can make a unified push into Varnheim, or they can pivot and push into TNN. One other possibility they could have is they could piece out of this conflict at some point and pivot into Team Chris. But I don't think that's their style. I think they're going to want to continue the war and fight the elves, and the elves will tip me off if there's any peace offerings on the cards. I'm pretty sure. So there we go. When we started this sort of series of turns, I'm trying to think back a couple of days. It was turn 26, I believe, and we were in a position where we had basically decided, look, we're going to have to try and stretch this game, play a long game. We're going to do that by funding and supporting those that are in a better position to resist than we are, because we are ourselves weak. That has been a successful strategy so far. By providing support to TNN, we're resisting the constant expansion of Agartha and Machaka, while at the same time turning a profit. But at the same time, Therados is, I'm pretty sure, actively marketing to members of that team as well, but not providing assistance in the sense that we're providing direct combat, direct equipment and gem assistance on generous trade terms to the elves in order to keep this war balanced. If we can keep the elves in this conflict, well, every turn for us is a victory there. It's a turn where we can focus on building ourselves up, because our mages aren't deployed. We're not in a total war. Our troops aren't attriting. We don't need to rush out as many troops as everyone else. Instead, what we can do is build infrastructure, build research mages, get globals out. I need temples to secure my land and start getting the benefits of my scales. So does Atlantis and Therados. There's a lot of things we can be doing with our time, and there's no need to go attack someone when we would just faceplant lose. We do have riches from beneath now. That is giving us a boost to our income. It's allowing Atlantis additional freedom in building up these new Coral Guards, which you will see more of from them as opposed to the naked Deep One Spearmen, which they've used a lot of to date, because they use many, many fewer resources. You can also see Atlantis is making 660 gold from their capital, which ain't half bad. I'm at 543, and Therados is at 297 for context. What do I think happens next? Well, we're just going to have to keep watching this Elven war turn by turn. We have to look for evidence that it's being reversed, that we have to increase our assistance, downscale our assistance, etc. I think that the sheer material advantage of what the elves are fighting is probably going to tell in the end, but we're redressing that balance slightly. They're showing a degree of skill in defense, and elves are just in general a deadly opponent who is hard to crack on defense. If they were going to lose someone, losing Arcocephali took away the least relative combat power of the available options, because you can bet that the She-Lord thugs will be out counter-raiding and making life as difficult as possible. And TNN has now proven that they are capable of fighting major defensive battles on fortified locations, which is exactly the strength that Agartha was trying to leverage against them. The ability that Agartha has to break forts ruthlessly, quickly, roll in and secure those locations and worry about your raiders later. I am concerned by, for example, the sheer volume of stuff that is coming behind. We know Sneck the Drakon is in there. We know there's a bunch of troops. We know that there's this big group of Lion Warriors up here. And I've been told, remember, we have a freedom of navigation agreement across these provinces, that these Lion Warriors will be transiting via our territory in order to get to the south at some point. So we have to be ready for that. There is a stream of reinforcements. There will be pressure on Varnheim from Team Cold. But I believe in the elves. I believe the elves would be able to fend us off with no effort and we would just die. And I believe that if we sit by and don't get murdered by the elves are in a position to resist in a meaningful way while we get our house in order. So, I acknowledge that that hasn't been a particularly eventful set of turns from our perspective. I think we attacked basically indie provinces and then took these two over the course of 4 turns, which is not the sort of mid-game intensity you would expect, but it's the game we're playing. That's it for now. I'll see you in turn 31.